The left and right locators are foundational elements of Cubase, and once you start to understand how to use them and why you should use them, you'll understand the importance of them. Their first function is to designate a region for repeated recording and or playback. And I'll show you what I mean by that in just a moment, but the other feature is that they define a beginning and an ending for audio mixdown, also known as rendering. So let's talk about the concept of repeated recording and playback. When you're working in a DAW, typically you're not recording from the very start of a project to the very end of a project. Instead, you're going to be working in regions. So if you're working in pop music, you might record the parts for the chorus in a separate recording than the verse. That way you can do it in segments instead of trying to do a magic take all at once. And the locators are used to define that temporary region in which you're working. For example, right now I have the left and right locators placed at measures 3 and 5, which means that if I was doing a recording on this track, and I'm going to use my numeric keyboard like we learned in the last video by typing the number 1 key to move to the left locator, then I hit record, it's going to start recording at that third measure, and then if I don't have the cycle mode on, it's going to continue recording until I hit the stop key, which is 0. Now, I didn't play any material there on my MIDI keyboard, so there was no data recorded. That's why we don't see anything in this segment. Now, let's say I was recording. This time I will go ahead and play some material. And I thought to myself, no, that's not really what I wanted to play. I can hit stop and then undo, but without the locators, I'd have to use my mouse to move back to the location where I wanted to redo the recording. That means I have to grab my mouse and move it on the screen. Instead, if you set the left locator at the beginning of the recording, then all you have to do to take another take is hit the number 1 key on your numeric keypad. That will move the cursor back to the position of the left locator. Let me show you again how fast that can be. I'm going to start a recording. That's not what I wanted, so I'll hit stop and undo, left locator, and record. Then if I didn't like that, undo, left locator again, and start the recording again. So when you're doing a lot of takes over and over again, it's really nice to have a position to move back to very quickly, and that's what that number 1 key on your numeric keypad is for. But how do you place the locators? Well, a few videos ago, I showed you how to enter those locations manually into the left and right locator positions here on the toolbar. However, there are easier ways to move the left and right locators. And again, remember that this timeline is bisected into an upper and lower zone so that you can move the left and right locators or draw them in very quickly. You'll notice that when I hover my mouse pointer over that upper layer of the timeline, it turns gray. That means that I can click and drag a region that defines the left and right locators. And you'll also notice that it's kind of magnetically snapping those locators to the bar lines. If yours isn't doing that, make sure that you have snap on. That's this control. If the snap is off, then you can place those locators anywhere you want and they won't line up onto bar lines, which is sometimes preferred. But most of the time, if you're working in a musical project, then you'll want to keep the snap on. That way you can draw in the locators exactly on the bar lines. You can also click and drag each individual locator, but it's important to remember that the left locator should always be on the left of the timeline and the right locator should always be on the right side of the timeline. That's why they're actually pointing in the direction they should be facing. And if you hover your mouse pointer over a region defined by the locators, you can click and drag that region around. So if your verse and chorus and solos and so forth are all 8 bars, then you could draw in an 8-bar left and right locator region, then click and drag that region around. So you could start recording here, all the different tracks, and then go to the next set of 8 measures, then go to the next set of 8 measures, and so forth. There's another way to move the locators, and that is by using the modifier keys. On a Macintosh, you would hold down the Option button and click on the measure for the left locator position. And for the right locator, you would hold down the Command button and click on the measure. On a Windows-based PC, you would hold down Control for the left locator and Alt for the right locator. And a quick reminder that if you hit the / key on your numeric keypad, it turns the region of the left and right locators into a cycle mode, so that playback and recording will actually happen in a cycle. And the other primary functions of the locators are to define a mixdown region. Usually it's the start and stop of your project. But if you wanted to do stem mixing, you can move the locators and export or render regions of a project. I'm going to hit undo a few times here, and then I'm going to hit Shift and F to see the full range of my project. So if I wanted to mix down just measures 1 through 4, I could define that region with the left and right locators. Then when I went to the audio mixdown, it's going to export just between measures 1 and 4. So I'll be getting a shorter version of the project, or a stem. But if I wanted to mix down the entire project, I would need to put my left and right locators around the entire project. The easiest way to do that is to do a Control or Command A, which is a select all in the event display, so it selects every single thing that you have in your event display. Then type the P key on your computer keyboard for place, and what that does is places the left and right locators around the very beginning and very ending of the project. Then when you go to Audio Mixdown, it will export from the beginning of the project all the way to the very end of the last recorded event in the project window. So those are the locators, and next let's talk about the metronome.